You know that specific moment in early November or late October, because the shops start earlier every year, when the conversation turns to Christmas and someone mentions what they're planning to spend this year, or asks what's on everyone's list, or starts the annual negotiation about whether the family is doing a gift limit this time or just seeing what happens. And you already know what you're doing. Not because you haven't thought about it, because you thought about it once, a long time ago. And what you decided has been working well enough that there's nothing to renegotiate. The people you love will receive something considered, something chosen, something that fits the relationship and the moment. It will not cost what the shops have decided Christmas should cost. Nobody receiving it will feel the difference. While somewhere in that conversation, someone is already calculating how many months it will take to pay off what December is about to become. Here is what almost nobody calculates about Christmas spending. The season is expensive by design. Not because gifts are expensive, not because celebrating is expensive, but because the entire commercial infrastructure of the season, the advertising, the displays, the countdown, the gift guides, the suggestion that love is most legibly expressed through a purchase of a certain scale, exists to make one specific number feel like the floor rather than the ceiling. The National Retail Federation estimates that the average American spends over $900 on Christmas each year. Gifts, decorations, food, travel, and the various categories the season creates for spending that would not otherwise exist. And a significant portion of that is not funded by December's income. Lending Tree data consistently shows that more than a third of Americans are still paying off Christmas debt when the next Christmas arrives, carrying the cost of last year's celebration forward into a year they will ask for the same again. The gap between what Christmas costs and what Christmas needed to cost is not accidental. It is the product of decades of commercial investment in making a lower number feel insufficient, feel like choosing less, giving less, being less present in the lives of the people who matter most. And the infrastructure renews itself every year, earlier every year, arriving in October now, because the season that generates that level of spending is worth investing in maintaining. Nobody at the gift shop shows you the January credit card statement when you're deciding what to buy in December. You only meet that number later, quietly, in the arithmetic of a new year that has already inherited a debt from the celebration that just ended. There is a name for why spending more at Christmas never feels like quite enough. Psychologists call it scope insensitivity. Research by Daniel Kahneman and Ritov showed that in emotionally charged contexts, people's responses do not scale proportionally with the size of what they are responding to. The emotional impact of giving someone a $200 gift is not meaningfully larger than the emotional impact of a $50 one. The feeling of generosity, the warmth of the moment, the memory created, these do not double when the price does, but the cost does. Exactly. This is why Christmas spending escalates without producing a proportional increase in the experience of Christmas. The brain is not measuring the dollar amount. It is measuring the gesture, the presence, the feeling of being thought of, none of which are indexed to price in the way the commercial infrastructure of the season suggests they are. And Christmas is where scope insensitivity has found its most hospitable cultural conditions. The social script is consistent and ancient. Christmas is for the people you love, and what you spend is evidence of how much you love them. Spending less is read as caring less, not explicitly, not cruelly, but in the quiet social accounting that happens when gifts are compared, when children's reactions are observed, when the table conversation after the unwrapping settles into what everyone received. Never spending big on Christmas is not Scroogery. It is recognizing that the emotional experience of Christmas, the warmth, the connection, the specific joy of a day spent with people who matter, is not located in the scale of the spending. It is located in the same place it always was and always will be, regardless of what the receipt says. And the data confirms what the restraint already knew. The research on gift satisfaction consistently shows that recipients remember the thought, the specificity, the sense of being known, not the price. The gifts that are remembered are almost never the most expensive ones. They are the ones that arrived with the clearest signal that someone had been paying attention. 3 forces. A brain that cannot scale emotional response proportionally to spending scale. A culture that reads restraint as insufficiency. And a January credit card statement that arrives every year without fail to prove that the spending was never about the people. It was about the pressure. It was there the first Christmas the limit was set. Not dramatically, not as a declaration, just quietly, before November arrived, with the people it affected and the specific relief of a season that no longer required calculating whether the number was impressive enough, whether the gift was sufficient, whether January would be difficult because of what December had become. It was there the year of the agreement, the family, the friends, the group that decided on a limit together, and the discovery that nobody actually missed the scale, that the day itself was the same or better, that the conversation after the unwrapping was warmer and longer and less distracted than in years when the gifts had been more expensive and the room had been quieter about what everything cost and whether it was enough. It was there, the moment of watching a child open something small, something specific, something chosen because it matched exactly what they had mentioned once, weeks before. And the reaction being exactly what any reaction to any gift had ever been. Immediate, complete, indifferent to the price in the way that only children, who have not yet learned to perform gratitude proportionally to expense, can be. It was there, in the specific January that followed the first Christmas that cost what it needed to cost. The decorations came down. The tree went back into the attic. The wrapping paper had long disappeared. The gifts had settled into ordinary life, used or forgotten the way gifts do after the first week of January. And then the credit card statement arrived. And there was nothing in it from December. No number waiting to be paid down, no calculation of how many months the celebration would take to fully finish. One thing from last Christmas had not followed into the new year: the bill. These are not people who don't celebrate Christmas. Most of them love the season, the ritual of it, the gathering, the particular quality of a day that exists outside ordinary time and asks everyone in the room to be present in a way most days don't. What they do not do is fund that day at a scale the day itself never required. They are the person who, when the gift conversation starts in November, has an answer already. Something close to this: we do a limit, $50 each. It's the best thing we ever decided. That is not someone being tight with the people they love. That is someone who separated the experience of Christmas from the commercial scale of Christmas, who found that the day itself lost nothing when the spending did, and that the relationships it was supposed to celebrate were entirely unaffected by what the receipts said. They do not spend the weeks before Christmas in financial calculation. The question of what it will cost was answered once, early, in a conversation that removed the pressure entirely and has not needed revisiting since the first year it worked. And they tend to enjoy the season more than the people around them who are spending more, not because they have less to worry about, though they do, but because they made a different decision about what the season was actually for. Not for the gifts, for the people the gifts were supposed to be about, who were there regardless. And the next time someone asks what they're spending on Christmas, that answer is ready, and it requires no apology. Now, finally, the objection. Christmas is for the children. You can't put a limit on what you spend on your kids at Christmas. That's different. That's not the same as being careful with money. That's just being a parent. This is not about people who spend generously at Christmas and can genuinely afford it. If the spending brings genuine joy and arrives without a debt that follows, nothing here is arguing against that. This is about the specific pressure to spend at a scale that doesn't match what the people receiving the gifts actually needed, and what happens when that pressure is simply removed. And the children argument carries less weight than it assumes. Children remember Christmas by its feeling, not its price. The research on childhood memory of holidays consistently shows that what children carry forward is the atmosphere, the warmth, the togetherness, the particular texture of a day that was different from all the others, not the cost of what was under the tree. The parent who spends less and is more present, less stressed, less burdened by January's accounting, is giving their children something the expensive version consistently fails to: a model of celebration that doesn't require debt to be real. The people who never spend big on Christmas are not giving their families less. They are giving them a Christmas that ends when Christmas ends, not one that continues into the credit card statement of the following spring. Here is what most people get backwards. The person who spends significantly on Christmas is not demonstrating how much they love the people in their lives. They are demonstrating how effectively the commercial infrastructure of the season converted that love into a purchase, and how willingly they accepted the equation that the two things were the same. The person who set a limit, or chose something specific over something expensive, or simply decided that the day would be about the people rather than the presents, that person did not love Christmas less. They refused to let a retail calendar decide what loving it looked like. Most people spend Christmas money they don't have on gifts people don't need to impress people they love. These people just love the people. And the person who found that version of Christmas is not having less of it. They are having the version that was always available, that was never behind a price point, never dependent on a December budget, never something that needed to be paid for again in January. There is a moment people who never spend big on Christmas all describe in almost the same way. It is not the first year the limit held. It is not the Christmas morning where nobody mentioned the change. It is an ordinary January. The decorations down, the year begun, the credit card statement arrived, and the specific, quiet absence of a number from December sitting there waiting to be dealt with. Not relief that it's over, not satisfaction at the saving, just the specific, unremarkable beginning of a year that started where it was supposed to start, without carrying the celebration of the one before it as a debt into the one that just began. Not because Christmas wasn't celebrated, because it was celebrated at the scale it actually needed, and the people it was for never knew the difference, because there wasn't one. Christmas lasted one day. The debt lasted 4 months. The gifts were never the point. What choosing not to go into debt for them said about everything else was. 10 years from now, nobody asks what you spent on Christmas. They ask whether the people you celebrated with felt loved, and whether you arrived in January still able to say yes. Do you still spend big on Christmas? Or have you found a version that works without the January bill? Has anyone ever made you feel like spending less meant loving less? Drop it below. We read every single one.